I wanted to end the day by presenting you with some data on what's going on in the economy in smaller, and bigger ways, because we are seeing something happen to human beings. We saw a little bit of it last year, but it was mostly cloaked by the fear of the October statements. But we're seeing a revolution in the way people view themselves with respect to the economy that I think can give us a glimmer of how do ideas coming naked into the world as innovation become accepted by the world as a part of what it means to advance the cause of civilization. So let me just share with you a few issues of the long view that we are grappling with but not speaking much about. The first of which is by 2050, we're going to hit between 6 and 8 billion people. And there is not a green solution to the consumption of resources within that spectrum. The average person looking at the future, whether they are in Samoa or they're in Tanzania or the U.S., has still still envisions what was the $35,000 a year 1980s lifestyle, a single family or a multi-family house with a living room for the kids, effective plumbing, electricity, power, heat, and the rest of it. The consumption of energy at this point is now equaling in 5-year intervals the consumption of all energy in the history that preceded it. We are going to double the population of the world, looking at 1990 as the base between now and 2050, and there's no getting around it. And we are advancing solutions that capture, for energy, for schools, for everything, that capture the statistic of the present as if it's the statistic of the future, and we are not engaged with those statistical problems in a way that promotes the interests of civilization. Secondly, we are aging, and we are aging dramatically faster. We have now pushed past 84 as the median age for the greatest generation. We will probably push past 105 for the boomers, and perhaps 120 for the children of the boomers, though nobody knows what the end of this is. But what we do know is that increasingly aging and the ability to last a long time in relative good health is a product of industrial and class infrastructure in which the haves will have more time. And there was always a satisfaction, if you will, in lower classes that 72 and out seemed to be an immutable social rule that applied to everybody. But now it seems possible to finance your way to additional years, producing benefit for countries with excesses of capital and, of course, significant risks for countries with shortage of capital. Capital is not just about the ability to build buildings, it's about the ability to extend life. And that is not an equally distributed variable. It is a variable that seems to have its greatest impact on countries which have excesses of profits and capital. And I will tell you, it's a source of significant irritation to poor people in the U.S., poor people in Africa, and poor people all around the world, that the benefit of wealth and income is actually a longer life lived with more happiness. And again, there's an issue of how do ideas and the achievements of brilliant people connect, I think, in a significant way to the evolution of civilization. The third point is that within that population explosion, the median age of people on the planet is itself increasing. And it has increased in a way that exacerbates political and economic issues. If we look at the distribution of boomers and we look at the distribution of millennials, the distribution of Gen Xers, the people in the middle, reveals that they will never have in any democracy a sufficient political constituency to control their own political destiny. For the time being, the destiny of U.S. politics and European politics are controlled by a plurality of aging boomers whose self-interest in programs to benefit for the aging is obvious, and a secondary emerging plurality from a voting point of view of younger people whose similar interest in promoting their own interest in education and jobs is obvious with the mature interests in capital preservation and leadership dynamics of the Gen Xers being excluded because of the absence of plurality. And we have no political mechanism for adjusting this. And we believe, at least the Harrison Group, that this is a significant challenge to civilization. The boomers want to know if they can keep government programs afloat. The millennials want to assert their political will, and the Xers are caught in the middle. And then there's this phenomenon with boys. I know that it's always a challenge to be a guy and talk about sexual politics in a way that suggests that we have a problem from the victory of women. But we do. About 20% of all boys in the U.S. between the age of 13 and 16 will commit a significant felony unrelated to drugs. Perhaps related to the consumption of drugs, but it's not a drug-related felony that ranges between auto theft and significant assault of a person on the street. 20% of the boys. It used to be that when I was a kid, there was this thing like 2% was always a rotten apple. And you know, it seemed like the 2% could be controlled, but 20% of 35 million boys is 7 million active felonists whose perception of their own position in the future is uninformed by any prospect of success. When we look at what's going on between boys and girls, girls are absolutely triumphing in the politics of the millennial generation. For every 100 girls that graduate from high school, 96 boys graduate. For every 100 girls that are suspended from public elementary and secondary schools, 250 boys are suspended. For every 100 boys that are expelled, girls that are expelled, 335 boys are expelled. For every 100 girls enrolled in college or women enrolled in college, there are 77 men. For every 100 women earning a bachelor's degree, 73 males. For every 100 women earning a master's degree, 62 American males. And for every 100 earning a doctorate degree, it's 92, and that's largely accounted for by the influx of foreign-born graduate students in the American classroom. The gap between women and males in terms of the metrics for success at the young age is accelerating, and we're seeing the arise of a class of boys who have no feeling for involvement in success in the future at a time when the prospects for success among young people is actually rising because of the number of people who are aging and leaving the job scene. We got a real problem with our boys, and the problem manifests itself in education. It manifests itself in educational statistics. It manifests itself in cops in the classroom. And it manifests itself in a vague sense of unease among young people about how these conflicts will be worked out. We have a view of the near view in America. We keep track of a lot of statistics of affluent, of high-income people in America. And between actually 2007 and the third quarter 2009, confidence in the future of people who are in the best position to have confidence in their future has dropped from roughly 96% of households to a bottom out at 46 during the first quarter of this year, but holding at 50. And there's been a lot of talk about optimism coming back and leading the economy back. In fact, we've got back to 55% of affluent households feeling confident, but only 46 of them feel confident about the future of their children. And as a result, confidence has not come back in a strong way, but in a similar way, it has decoupled itself from economic prospecting. This is a complicated plot that shows the relationship between the Dow Jones, optimism in the Dow Jones, and optimism in the future quality of life. There is a decoupling of the relationship between economics and the personal value, the value of personal security. Now, we have relied upon the belief that economics would dictate, or rather the optimism would dictate positive economics. Optimism is decoupled from economics and resulting in an economy that's not, or a culture that's not dominated by the search for jobs, as some of us would have suggested, but rather, as we heard in the last presentation, the search for happiness. The economy has for a long time been supported by a group we call high-margin consumers. These consumers made up 36% of the top of the economy, but accounted for about 60% of the profits at retail. Since 2007, when the recession really took off, we peg its beginning in the summer of 2006, but the number of families in the traditional retail consumption mode has declined from 4.8 million to 1.8 million. A lot of that decline has occurred because about 1.5 million families have left the affluent space, but it's also occurred because a large number of families have either become due diligent consumers in which value and value, price, and brand comparisons predict their purchasing, or they become very skeptical of economic future and become highly resistant to consumption at any level. But we're down to 17% of the top 10% supporting the lion's share of American profitability in products like the ones that we develop in housing, hotel, and development. And it's an insufficient number for the old model to succeed. On our shoulders, as we look at innovation, is an innovation in how do we reinvent concepts like housing, economic footprint, and relative value of consumers. There are about 60% of the economy believe that the real estate is rebounding or bouncing back soon. About 60% believe the stock market is bouncing back soon. I know it hit 10,000 yesterday, but that's a 10,000 that's not necessarily engaged by everybody. 73% of the affluent end of the economy are still buying fewer big tickets than they did a year ago, which was a year in which they bought substantially fewer items than the prior year. 38%, our fourth quarter estimate, is still believe the recession will go a year beyond next year. And since we have a disproportionate number of leaders, it's still not a happy number. But clearly we're at an inflection point where people are beginning to see the recession come to an end. But one of the things that's really interesting is the number of people, and the savings rate is still running at about 12% at the high end of the economy, despite the inflation problems, and that money is not going into active investment accounts, which is insufficient to stabilize the markets in the long run. Confidence in leaders has never been lower. The leader in which we have the greatest confidence is President Obama. But it's really interesting to me that a lot of our survey are people who are in U.S. business leaders who themselves have no confidence in the ability of business leaders to lead us out of this economic mess. Again, I say that we are looking at a period in which the nature of civilization is in fact changing. There's a guy who forecasts that this happens about every 50 years. It's a convenient retrospective look, but it's about the timing that his model would have predicted. Just real quickly, what's going to happen this holiday for those of you who are curious about the economy. Gift spending for the kids will be the same, for the wife will be the same, but gift spending for extended family, friends and colleagues is tanking. Now, if that spending had a historic role as a symbolic declaration of relationship, then that role is being extracted from the business, social, and familial relationships and being replaced by time spent. On a basic difference, we have Christmas off year on year in gift giving 15%. So it's going to be a very difficult Christmas from a retail point of view. But what's increasing is the conversation within families and friends. The amount of time people are forecasted to spend with family and friends is up nearly 30% for families, 20% for their friends. But notice that in terms of engagement in the community, it's not up at all. And in fact, we're seeing an extraction of money from charitable giving of as much as 25% this Christmas, with about 50% fall in the number of families who give as a family event. What people are thinking about is giving fewer gifts but making them more special. In other words, as we decrease the number of people to whom we give gifts, we're going to increase the social value, the perceived social value of gifts. And again, we're doing this as a reaction to economic circumstances without consideration for the civilizing evolution that supported the habit. Trust is just about gone from the economy, but what people are looking at is reliability. We don't trust salespeople anymore. We find them more or less reliable, and on the basis of that advice, we follow their advice. When asked to rate extremely or a very trusted source of information, salespeople rate an 8, but as sources of information for reliable purchasing, they rate number 1. The economy is changing from an economy in which the basis of trust is being transformed into the empirical validation of reliability. And this is a very different social animal. When we look at what's happening in households, males and female roles are themselves changing. Guys continue to insist that they're entrepreneurial, that they're winners, that they're competitive, and much of our commercial enterprises are structured around talking to people who think this way. But about 50% of all reliable economic decisions are now being made by women, and about 90% of the time it's male-female collaboration. Women continue to be patient, optimistic, and using the family as a benchmark for their decisions. But when we look at the two of them together, the characteristics that bind men and women together, it's a perception that I'm intelligent, I am loyal, I am self-sufficient. And we are seeing a boom in the quality of American marriages, in part driven by the fact that a great deal of consumption and a great many decisions were made either by a male or a female on the basis of what they wanted, but the recession has driven people to talk about the thing they didn't talk about, money and its prospects. And oh, by the way, the role of children in economic decision-making, particularly around the kinds of economies that are represented by people in this room, has dramatically increased as parents bring the children into the debate over what they really need. Needs-based decision-making now dominates the American social scene. 55% of families are choosing brands desired by their kids. And insofar as real estate, investments, vacations, cars, what we watch on TV, this is now a negotiated decision between males and females, when prior to the last couple of years it was a decision space that was split for different purposes at different times. Families are worried about running out of money. 53% of affluent and wealthy households believe they can run out of money, and when we look at households with $10 million in liquidity or more, 40% of those believe they could run out of money. So we've got a lot of uncertainty about the future in the household. So what have they done? They have become self-sufficient. People are decoupling from their perception of themselves as members of communities and recoupling as members of family units in which the needs of the family units trump any other need or any altruistic vision in their life. 77% of these households now report that the basis for their social reflection is self-sufficiency, and impatience is rising on a steep vector. Because of the state of the economy, they become a more self-sufficient consumer. The receptionist changed spending priorities. I'm cutting back on online spending as much as I'm cutting back on spending in the store. And what's the probability that when the recession is over, you'll go back to what used to be like? 40%. I've done a good job making my household fiscally responsible. I take pride in my... These are attitudes about the integration of the family into an economic unit whose survival is paramount over community, and apparently paramount over most governmental entities. Pride in shopping skills, it's 76%, and what they mean by this is the use of the internet and other techniques to evaluate alternatives in the marketplace. To the point about the electronic conversation, 62% of affluent, wealthy, and in fact, we can extend this down from our media studies to the whole 62% of people in the U.S. now participate in content sharing at some level online. When considering new purchase, I am spending more time researching and price comparing more than I have in the past. Again, 70%. I will not do business with companies whose activities have been negatively associated with the economy or tied to a scandal. 70%. Although 20% of them, more than 20%, just over 20% of America now acknowledges that they have compromised their values for money, up substantially from the past. But here's the irony. The recession has driven a trend to happiness through the heart of America. For years, the Harrison Group was kind of alone out there in measuring happiness. People would say on our scales, about 50% of the people would report top-tier happiness, and it kind of went along that way with a dip at 9/11 and a few ups and downs. But since the recession began, since this dialogue, since this concentration of interest at the family unit, at the lowest structural unit of society, happiness actually has risen among males and females by almost 20 points. We are looking at a culture in which people are finding themselves thriving at an interpersonal level within their family despite the problems they're dealing with. So what do we think the future of the future is? It is a world in which people have gone from I want to we need. A world in which the sustenance of self has given away to sustenance of the family. It's a world in which the crisis is continuous. And so people are building sort of white noise buffers against crisis. It's a world in which speeding to endpoints is a programmable part of the economy, and the intolerance for lack of traction across the space between endpoints is almost intolerable. The object of this game is to know where you want to go, and to actually take a hard look not at what the future of everything is, but what the future of yourself is. The object of the game is to rediscover amazement in the ability of your customers to absorb what you do. Not to be amazed by what you do, but to be amazed by their ability to integrate what you do, because this is a really complicated world. The second thing is to be constantly curious, to engage in constant learning, to forget that you might know the right answers, but to presume that you don't, and to be bold. The world will belong to the bold. We've been looking at what happened after the beginning of the Great Depression. And it is interesting to realize that everybody didn't lose. In fact, there were real significant gains for those people in America who were bold about what the future might entertain in electronics, in computing, in oil and gas, in virtually every industrial category that existed. Every single person here has been a big winner in the past. You competed with 5 million like-minded others. You won the race. You can win this race as well. You got to focus on what's in your interest. You got to understand what's in the interest of your customers. You got to be able to specify your own view of your own future. It's in a sense the world will not become a series of trends and large impact market movements. It'll become the sum of the recognition of a lot of individual market movements at the family level. When we say what does the future hold, we don't really care if you know how many kids are doing well in school in India. What we care about is how many kids are doing well in your family. Thank you very much.